Hi everybody, Greg here. I just wanted to make a video with a few things to think about if you are new to the recording process. Now, these aren't necessarily technical tips, but just things that will help you build good recording habits later on. Number 1, start getting used to playing to a metronome early on. Now, there's time when tempo flexing is okay. In a lot of orchestral music, you have a conductor who is pulling the tempo, dragging the tempo, and that's totally fine. However, they're totally doing that on purpose. It is a distinguished choice that they are making to adjust the tempo in that way. If you're writing orchestral music, or if you're just playing a, solo singer-songwriter tune and you're just laying down a guitar track and then singing over it, maybe doing some harmonies or something, that's okay. It can have a little bit of flex to it, but understand if you are going to send your track to other musicians and you want them to be able to play along to it, you need to get used to recording to a steady tempo or having deliberate tempo changes that you can accurately represent with either a click or a pre-recorded virtual instrument. This actually happens to me fairly often, where a fellow artist will send me something looking for production advice, looking for arrangements, and as soon as I go to play drums along with it, or even just line it up to a click track, I find just how off it can be. Now, it may not seem like such a big deal, but if you're trying to layer drums in with whatever you recorded, it's gonna show up if the tempo isn't even. Things like guitar and piano are much more forgiving in that regard. If your music is intended to have a groove to it, you need to get used to recording to a metronome. Now, this doesn't always just mean playing to a quarter note click. There are other ways to make it a little more natural, and I'm gonna make a whole other video just talking about tips to recording with a steady tempo. To put it in perspective, the metronome has perfect tempo. So if you have trouble locking in with it and you always find that you're rushing or dragging, the metronome is not the problem. Tip number 2. Use one mic and get really, really good with it. One of the easiest mixing jobs I ever did was for a project called the Floor Cloud EP that I actually recorded with the singer of my current band. Everything was pretty much recorded in the same room using the same microphone unless I needed to bring in more to additionally mic something. What ended up happening is right off the bat I had a very balanced mix without having to throw in EQ curves, anything like that. It just kind of sounded natural. What was very helpful with this was the fact that the tonal characteristics of the mic were always the same. So if I wanted to get a different tone, I either had to move the microphone or just straight up use a different instrument, use a different guitar. Not only did it help me read the frequencies in the instruments I was using, but it also helped me figure out the tendencies of that one particular mic and preamp that I was using. Number 3, decide whether you are using that exact moment in time creatively or technically. I realize I'm counting on my fingers that are below the screen, so maybe I should stop doing that. One of the biggest ways to crush your creative drive is to record one guitar take and then sit there for 20 minutes EQing it, compressing it, doing all of this other stuff to try to get the perfect guitar tone, when really you should be spending that time fleshing out the idea you just recorded. I am so bad about this when I'm recording. As soon as I record a vocal, as soon as I record a guitar, I immediately go in and start trying to mix it, and then I totally forget the overarching idea that I was trying to lay down, and I end up hurting my creative process trying to get too technical. Now, I know this is going to be hard to believe, but just remember that recording and mixing can be two separate instances. You can sit down and just record, and you can sit down and just mix, and in fact, it's probably going to be helpful to do it that way. In fact, sometimes it's fine to just work on an arrangement. So just set up one microphone, record every instrument into it, don't necessarily move the mic if you don't have to, just get the ideas down. One of the amazing things about the fact that we don't record on tape anymore is the fact that you can go back and redo it. Get the idea down, then worry about how to actually record it in a pristine way, if that's what you end up wanting to go for. Number 4, and this kind of falls into the same idea, don't worry about imperfect tracks. One of the biggest things that impacted my own recording and even my own playing is the idea of strong and wrong. This will also sometimes be said as, if you're gonna make a mistake, make a big one. I can say this with a lot of confidence, and I know that sometimes this isn't what we want to hear, but people care more about the passion that you're putting into your playing or your singing than the fact of hitting every single note right or not having fret buzz on that one note. There have been mixes that I've gotten a lot of really good feedback on from people that weren't that great. The reason why is that I was playing the instruments with passion. I mean, I was almost ripping the guitar strings off of the guitar, And that's what the song called for. It was a big driving tune, and that translated more than the fact that, at one point I literally played the entire wrong chord on one of the guitars, but people didn't really notice because it was just such a big, raucous tune. So to recap that one, if you're gonna miss a note, miss it with the same conviction that you played all the correct notes. The last one, and this is another one that I am so bad about, I don't even know why I'm telling you not to do it because I so do not practice what I preach on this one. Know the difference between mixing and mastering. If you're recording a song and you're referencing it with a totally finished, professionally done track, understand that that track has been mastered. To put it quickly, when you're mixing, you are creating the environment. You want to make sure that all the tracks work proportionally to one another. You want to make sure that everything can be heard properly. You want to make sure the balance is right between all the instruments. Now, mastering is when you take your stereo waveform at the end and you compress it, EQ it, just change the tonal quality of it. You're literally taking this mix you've done and framing it. So if you're new to recording, worry first about getting the instruments to stand out relatively and proportionally in your mix. If you take every instrument and try to EQ it, compress it like you're hearing on another totally finished track, understand that there's a whole other step that can help get it there, and you don't necessarily have to do all of that in mixing. One tip that you should probably wait to do something until mastering is if you're taking out the same frequency from every single instrument. Say on your speakers, you're like, oh man, 3000 hertz, 3K is really, really harsh. It's really punching through. My whole mix sounds very, very sort of metallic. I'm gonna take that out. And you end up taking it out from every single instrument. You could probably just do that in mastering. Again, that's sort of a tonal quality thing. If you have one instrument that's sounding really, really metallic and everything else sounds a little more warm, great, go for it. But just understand that you don't have to fix every single tonal error for the entire song in the mixing process. Hopefully these tips gave you something to think about if you're new to recording, or even if you're not. I trip over these all the time, and I've been doing this for a while. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Thank you for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you next time.